Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Apartment Department. I am your co-host, Ann Baum, VP of Marketing at Town Properties. With me, as always, is my co-host, Chris Johnson, Marketing Leader at Irwin Rose, a property management firm in Dallas. Today, we are so excited to have a really special guest, and that is Dorota Firek from Tour24. She is the Chief Marketing Officer. And she is here to talk to us about really self-guided tours and their place in multifamily right now, because self-guided tours are really important for a couple of reasons. One, they're hitting on the huge trend of self-service. They are helping our site staff focus more on the resident experience, which if you've been at NMHC Apartment Strategies or Retcon this year, or just kind of been listening, that's a huge focus right now. And then, of course, the rise of Gen Z and their preferences as renters. So with that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Tour24?
Hi, Anne. Hi, Chris. Great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I've listened to this podcast so many times with amazing guests, so it is a privilege to be here and spread the news about self-guided tours and our position in multifamily. I think that you were absolutely right. Self-service is here to stay, and prospect preferences are changing. And we have to really fulfill the demand on what prospect wants, how they want to do business, how they want to tour the apartment. And I think that's a big component of it. As you mentioned, Gen Zs, there's a lot of studies that actually say that Gen Zs don't like to talk to other people often. Oftentimes, they're very, they live in their own world. I mean, you have so many influencers that are so vivid and just very vocal through social media, but on a daily basis, they really don't talk to other people often, right? So yeah, Harvard study came up with stats that 80% of people prefer to take care of their task before they actually speak to customer service or representative. They want to take care of things right now. And us with self-guided tours, we started booming really during COVID when you couldn't see apartments in person. We had to come up with a technology that allowed people to rent apartments because business should never stop, right? And, without a solution, it was really hard to decide what kind of apartment you wanted to rent. And without seeing it, it's also really hard. And emergence of video tours came up also along with self-guided tours, and it was the rise. Now prospect almost expected, right? We as self-guided tours, Tour24 is in major property management companies, owners, operators use us and absolutely love the stats that we deliver. And what's very interesting actually is that almost 80% of tours across all of our portfolio are taken the same day as they are scheduled. So that's interesting because what we learn is that prospects search for apartments and they want to see it immediately, maybe not within 1 hour, although our stats say that 56%, 57% of tours happen within an hour. And maybe they want to see it after hours when leasing agents are not available. So we really fulfill that gap in productivity.
I think that's really cool. I was looking at the case studies on your website, and I saw something that, at least for one of the companies that you work with, that 55% of tours were happening after hours, after that 9 to 5 office hours. So exactly what you just said. What are you seeing from a trend standpoint? What types of units are being used for self-guided tours? Are they models? Are they, the units that are rentable at that moment, that are rent ready, or what are you seeing?
So we see in both, right? So it's a choice how property wants to display and show their units. So we have properties that show only models, but we have properties that show vacant units. So we do have vacant unit management as an option, which is fantastic because really it works very well for lease ups, especially, and they have to lease it fast, right? And I just did an interview with a client who actually told me a fun story. She said, I was there to train our new leasing agent, and we had 4 tours at the same time. So I chose somebody on a tour, he took somebody on the tour, and you guys showed two vacants. So it was something fantastic to learn that you can be so, so productive. And there's such thing as being called a modern leasing agent. It's a leasing agent that uses technology to streamline operations and productivity.
Do you think people choose self-guided tour over speaking with somebody?
I think there's people that definitely do, but there's also, people that like to talk to others, right? Like there's not one use case that is more important than another because you're gonna have both, right? Both type of people and both type of tours. I think the idea is to show variety of tours, right? That you can actually do that. And oftentimes, and I think that's a very strong value proposition for us as self-guided tours provider, is that even if you see the apartment in person with a leasing agent, then you can tour self-guided with your spouse or with your kids, or if you're shopping for your mother or your father, and you know, and you want to find them an apartment, you can do it with them later on. So you're not taking that time away from leasing agent when they already have done this work with you, right? You can just go on a tour again and again if you want to.
I think that's really interesting. I shopped for a car years ago when I got a new job. This job, I was like, I'm getting a new car, but I had a list of cars that I wanted to go like see, that were on my list. And I went to one dealership and the salesperson just gave me the keys to the car that I wanted to test. And he goes, here, go take it for half an hour or whatever. He took my license and I drove it and I immediately knew I did not like this car, right? And so I was able to bring it back and be like, hey, I'm really sorry. I don't like this car. And so that was almost to me like a self-guided tour. And it was the perfect experience because I wasn't stuck then. Like, again, I knew instantly that this was not the car for me. And so I wasn't stuck with this person, trying to do a whole thing for half an hour and, they were trying to sell me on this car. And so it was a really great experience. And so I always think about self-guided tours like that was literally the best car buying experience I ever had. Even though I didn't buy that car, it was almost like he knew what I wanted, that I just wanted to be able to see if I liked the car. So anyway,
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought it up actually, because we know what we like, right?
yeah.
So there's no amount of manpower that can convince me to rent an apartment I don't want.
Yes.
Right. So when you think about it, there's a lot of stress that we put on leasing agents. Oh, you got to close this deal. But people exactly know what they like. And so why not letting them tour and then decide? And of course, you have to do the follow-up. You have to do the work to close it, right? But giving them freedom and giving yourself more time to put other things than trying to convince them of the apartment they don't want. That's a really wrong span of your time, really.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Like I said, I don't think, I mean, maybe if they'd like given me the car, I would have been like, cool, but otherwise,
There you go. Free residence for everyone.
you get an apartment. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I love that story that out of 4 tours, 50% were self-guided.
I mean, I agree too, because self-guided tours, like we're closed on Sundays. And so self-guided tours allow our prospects to maybe meet on their terms, which I think we talk a lot about on this pod. How do we meet our prospects and residents on their terms more and more and get out of what multifamily has been doing for so long and try to do something different? Your technology allows that. What makes you guys a little bit different? Who are you integrating with? What's the power of Tour24? Tell us more about what makes you special.
Yeah, so I think the biggest differentiator, especially on the access side, is we integrate with smart access. So that's wonderful, right? We really, we use our app. You go to the app, tour guides you. It's an audio visual. It's like a museum tour on steroids. So it's not only the voiceover, but you also have a navigation, and you can see exactly the steps and directions where to get from point A to B and tour the property. So my background is really has a lot to do with integrations, working on the CRM side of things in the past. And we have them in place, but access is definitely one of the most biggest differentiators for us.
Awesome.
Going back to that kind of idea of a museum tour, because I was kind of wondering about that. Like, are properties setting up certain kind of focal points that they want the tour to talk about or point out to a prospect? Is that what you're saying? That there's almost like a voiceover, like I don't know, can they look at something and press a button and
Yeah,
get
yeah.
more information? Okay.
We do ID verification, so it's it's pretty secure and so on, standard procedure pretty much for everyone. And then the tour really the tour path is set by leasing agents, so it's completely up to the property management how they want to set up the tour. If we want to tour you through the lobby, or we want to show you the gym because this is the best feature for all the athletic people that are joining community. Right, they usually set up the tour however they want to tour in person. So usually it very mimics the in-person tours they usually do.
Okay.
And so when you open the app, you see the picture of actual place, location where you are. You can press the button and it tells you all about amenities, about all you see, what's available, and so on. And it leads you through the tour steps with the same kind of process.
That's really cool. So it's not just the unit, but really a prospect can get the entire. I like that. And then are there ways for, like, if a prospect has a question during the tour, is there like some sort of communication thing that they can interact with, like a text or like I have a question button or anything like that?
So yeah, so they can communicate with leasing agents, obviously post and pre-tour and so on. So there's a follow-up, and there is a button when you can even apply for lease immediately from the tour. I think what's the biggest differentiator, I think Chris, also to go back to Chris's question, is really the fact that we are the museum tour. This is the only tour provider that really provides audio visual aspect of it, and it feels like you were guided by the best leasing agents on their best day. We never have a bad day. Nobody is ever in a bad mood because the voiceovers are so pleasant and lovely. It's just really a smooth experience.
It's AI, and we talk about it all the time. That's why AI has taken hold, because AI doesn't have a bad day. It can handle all kinds of things that humans just, we're human. So this,
Yeah.
it's kind of the same idea of everything that we're talking about and how our tech stack is changing. So let me ask, so they schedule the tour, they go through the tour. Obviously you're tied into Knock or RealPage or Yardi or whoever. And so the whole process then just goes as was, right? If a tour had taken place and the teams, it's just a seamless handoff, and they follow up as they would after the tour, and then they close the deal, right? But they may have never talked to the actual leasing agent. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Some of what's really also cool is that some smaller properties, like we have a property in Chicago that it's really among very digital native kind of clientele. So like rather younger, like Ridley Field, the entire property doesn't have a leasing agent for tours. It's all self-guided tours, and it's leased 100% almost all the time because people expect it, right, from out of that building. But there is a lot of properties where there are leasing agents and there's two of them and they need more, right? So we come in handy, right? So I think, when it comes to AI and when it comes to self-guided tours, any type of technology that can help leasing agents being the best, that's really the future. It's not eliminating their worth. It's not eliminating their work. It's really adding flexibility and adding additional resources so then they can be more effective.
So this leads into, what are the trends that you see in our industry coming up? So we have more self-guided tours that came up with 2020. Obviously during COVID, we had to invent something to get people out there. This is a huge invention. It sounds like it's come a long way. I used self-guided tours at a firm 2 years ago when I was in the midst of it. But what's next, and how is this going to interact with the rest of our tech stack? How does this enhance centralization, which is a huge word? We talk about that a lot with our guests. A lot of people are going back to centralization. What is the technology? What's next? How do you see this with the trends coming?
Yeah, it's almost like a question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have no idea. It's really, we live in a world that is transforming so fast. I mean, even in the last, 5 years since I stepped my foot in multifamily, I have seen so much change, positive change, to where we started with automation. Now it's heavy AI. Now, it's gonna be a buzzword forever. And it's really growing so fast that there's no stopping there, right? It's it's going to automate our processes, strategies, and yes, centralization is big. But what does it mean for you, right? What centralization means for me as a vendor, right? As a partner vendor, and property management companies maybe look at it differently. What does it mean to you, Chris? Centralization.
Yeah, I like when you ask me the question back. Um, so what does centralization mean to me? I think, okay, let me back up and say it certainly depends on market, company size. I think it could mean a lot of things. I don't know if I'm truly on board with what some people call true centralization. I do think that there's elements that would work in our industry. I mean, I'm thinking about maybe a centralized phone area. So having your own, I don't want to call it a call center, but having a few people answer the phones for you. I do know I have small properties. It would help to be able to give them some relief when they need to go to lunch or we have to close the office or whatever. And I think technology helps us get there. So centralization to me is enhancing what we're already offering using technology and however that works within your own tech stack. To me, it's not full. We're going to do everything from like one area and kind of go back out. I talk about this a lot. I grew up in the Southern California market, and Irvine Company, who we all know is huge. They did centralization before it was a thing. I mean, they had one center for leasing for all of their communities in Irvine, or a lot of them at least. And I think we've learned a lot, and we know websites a little bit better. We know digital a little bit better, and so maybe we can use the centralization again with websites and some other things. I think Sarah said it best. Who wants to manage 150 different websites if you're a large company? That really resonated with me because sometimes it's hard when I just have 20.
Sure, but like for me, I feel like centralization, sorry, is more of a mindset, right? We're going with technologies that enhance operations, really. So if you plug in self-guided tours here, we're just like centralization tool that we can substitute for some of the gaps, right? Not replace, but substitute, and streamline operations. So that's how I look at centralization personally. And it may mean so many things to different people, right? That's why I asked you, Chris, what does it mean to you, right? And it may mean something completely different from one PMC to another as well, right? Because how they define it, maybe they need a centralized different operations, and it's just a mindset, right?
I think it's a great point. It does matter, and it does matter mindset and what you're actually trying to achieve too. But you have to do it right, right? Like the technology helps you, but you still have to do it right. You talked about this. Your tech stack, you could have the best technology there is, but if it doesn't talk to the other pieces of your tech stack, then you're not really going anywhere. I'm still curious on how your app integrates. I mean, obviously it puts it into the PMS, but you have to download the app? I mean, is it pretty seamless? How do you get prospects to get there? How do you get them to say like, yes, this is great. Like, I want the app. I want a self tour. Because that education piece of it matters as well, right?
Absolutely. And when we started this app, it was a brand new concept, right? Like, how do you tell people, oh, go self-tour, you know? And because people weren't aware. Now, a few years later, people know of self-guided tours. It's a term that was largely adopted, so we don't really struggle with adoption. People know self-guided tours, what they mean. It all depends how you market it, right? So it has to be visibility on the website to start and attract the prospect that want to self-tour, right? So websites visibility and buttons and whatever it is, chatbot that you can do the scheduling. So yes, integrations matter. So we do integrate with CRM and PMSs and chatbots and whatnot, all the AI aspects. So for easy scheduling with ILSs and so on. So it's the visibility point is strong, right? It's right there. And I think what's very important is really understanding we all as vendor partners have to be agnostic, and we have to make this integration happen between vendor partners because it's all about the client. And I love companies that have open mindset because we are better together.
Yeah. It's funny. I know we were talking before the show that usually these conversations, we think we're going to talk about one thing but I think it is important for, companies to know where their technology partners stand. That, again, going back to trends at Retcon and apartment strategies, that is definitely something that people are talking about more and more. So I think knowing that you guys feel that way, you're on trend.
I do think we've talked a lot about this. I do wish that the integrations were a little bit stronger in our industry. I wish more companies had the mindset that your company has and would just make it easier for everybody to kind of do business. It benefits everybody really to do that and be open and sharing. So I really appreciate that mindset. And I appreciate your mindset on centralization because it's true. It really is a mindset. So what are you actually trying to achieve? And I think sometimes we should just step back and say, what are we trying to do? And I think in your case, you're trying to make it easier for prospects to take the tour in their way. And you're trying to make it easier on the teams. And so it's an efficiency play, but for everybody involved. I know that there are times that I wish I could have scheduled a tour, or how many times when I was an apartment renter by choice, when I would show up to the office and they weren't open. But I didn't know that. It is nice to have that in your back pocket to say it doesn't matter and you can take this. How many of the, and don't name names, of course, but are any of your properties like saying you can go anytime, or there's still some parameters like you're definitely not going to go at 10 p.m. You're not going to go at 4 a.m. Do you still put some parameters around it, or is it just company feels like?
So the name may fool you, right? 24, Tour 24. It's not 24/7. Obviously, you want to give some sort of parameter. So there's some properties that actually show us as late as 10 p.m. because let's say the property is right next to the hospital and most renters are nurses and doctors and so on. So they have to go in odd hours, right? So yes, but standard we really see the most is 8 to 8. Outside of business hours, usually offices close around 5 p.m. on regular day, right? On Saturday and Sunday, we work for them the full day, like normal leasing agent would, and sometimes with them on Saturdays if they keep it open, right? But that's pretty much standardized.
I'm still, I keep going back to some of the stats I saw on your website, and I know we've talked a little bit about them, but I'm seeing 39% of tours took place on Saturday and Sunday. I think sometimes there's still a lot of question around self-guided tours, like what is the validity? Do people really want these? And I'm just blown away by these stats that I'm seeing because the answer is yes. Prospects do want this as an option. And it just, I don't know, how you talked about tours. Here's one, 93% of tours scheduled and completed on the same day. And then we talked about the within 1 hour. I mean, yeah, like haven't losing by not having this as an option. I'm like, my mind's blown right now.
And recently, we actually came up a few months ago with a new feature called Tour Now. What does it allow is like if a tour is not scheduled, you can tour immediately within a minute, right? If you schedule for tour. So let's say a prospect is walking by and sees we usually have some signs or, that attract people to tour and they want to see it immediately. So across all of our portfolio in February, 20% of all tours were Tour Now. So that actually it's a huge attest to prospect urgency. Like I want to see it and I want to see it now.
Right now, yeah.
Right now. So 20% of all tours, that's pretty high number across portfolio.
That's unbelievable. Was there a certain type of property? I mean, like in a metro location, or I don't know. Did you see that?
I have to deep deeper, but I would assume it would be busier metro locations mostly. Urban locations you have a little bit more of, it's not as busy, right? So yeah, I would assume so, but I would have to dive a little bit deeper in the data.
Yeah, that's totally okay. That's still a huge number. I think that's interesting too, because you also, and again, I'm using generalizations, but I think you also hear sometimes too when you see higher walk-in numbers, like, no, there's no way that many people are walking in, but your staff, 20% of people wanting to tour immediately. It's like, yes, like their walk-in traffic is still is still a
And
thing.
people are just not patient anymore, right? Have you seen this? Like we are just going full speed on life, right? We do life so much faster in general. So like I remember when I was the prospect shopping for my new apartment and I couldn't get an appointment to see this one place that I really wanted to see for like 2 weeks. And by the time I actually scheduled it, it was taken. Well, good for the property management that they actually filled it, but I missed out on my unit and I was frustrated, right? So if they had self-guided tours available, I would go see it immediately. And maybe I would be the one happy one that actually got the apartment I wanted.
Right.
And so yeah, so the patient thing is going away. So I think when it comes to trends, we have to think about it. The prospect preferences and in general, residents' preferences. Where is it going? How much tolerance do we have these days versus we don't, right? And what is the stack that can bridge that gap in in a new way people live?
Yeah, I think so too. And you're right. I mean, we're spoiled. Like, I won't order something off of Amazon if I can't get it at least within 2 days. Sometimes I need it overnight. Like, sometimes I have to order something at 10 at night and I need it there by like 5 the next morning, right? But like,
Mhm.
I won't order something. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, that, like, saying that out loud is a little embarrassing. But I think, like, if I
We're
feel that way,
spoiled.
yeah, we're spoiled. And so, like, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, that's how life is now. But I think you're exactly right that then we expect every aspect of our life to be that available and accessible.
Well, there is a trend too of people, a lot of movement. People are still moving and they may not have a week to schedule a tour because they might have just flown in and they want to see 6 communities in the area that they want to see it. And they don't have the time to even schedule it all. They need to take some of this on their own if they can. I mean, we get a ton of, not a ton, but we do have a lot of people that rent sight unseen and just do the online leasing process through the information we gave them digitally, which is kind of crazy. But I think that's happening more and more.
Oh, absolutely.
What percentage of people, I think you talked about this a little bit, but what percentage of people are you seeing that are applying straight from a tour?
So the conversions are different. I think it's very important, different for different properties, right?
Yeah.
And they're measured differently because I feel like we actually open a Pandora box of multi-touch attribution and how people actually are measuring this, right? Because it's not really necessarily, there's a lot of companies that are still measuring the first touch and the last touch as their attribution model, right? Which sucks because it's not a full picture. So when you look at the full prospect journey, right, from anything on attract side, which is the ILSs and the website and everything, when they first see it, right, the searches, and then and then finally conversion to tour. Like let's say they have a scheduled tour button and they go either in person or self-guided or they watch 3D tour, whatever that is. I feel like it's really hard to determine which one of these sources really converted that lease.
Yeah.
Because it's and oftentimes it gets misreported, sadly. And so our value prop is not to prove, oh, we got you that many leases, although everybody will ask us about it. And even, even if you get even if you get 16%, that's huge because it's already like technology pays for itself, right? And you're really covering, you saving on additional personnel because after hours, weekends, right? That's covered. So you're already saving there, right? But when it comes to conversion, I feel like we need to talk more and more about multi-touch attribution. How do you know we 100% measure it correctly if we only get into consideration first and last touch? And there's some companies that actually do have multi-touch attribution and it gives credit to all the technology because it is a mindset, really. They're not just focused on leases, they're focused on the experience they're providing for the prospect and how they prefer this experience to happen. So So oftentimes there's a mindset, and I'm not trying to dance on the subject because we have conversions that are 100%, we have conversions that are 37%, we have all kinds of different conversions, but at the end, as long as you have some and the technology pays for itself basically and more because you actually have extra leasing agents that is never sick, that's great, right?
I think that's good. And I mean, I think going back to our earlier it's like, how many more tours did you get because the technology was available? And so to your point, you're like, it's providing value. So I think you're exactly right about that. What else? Is there anything else that we should know from, self-guided tours, kind of the self-service, how it's allowing, leasing staff to focus more on resident experience? Anything else you want to talk to us about?
Just that self-guided tours are here to stay, right? And it was a time when we started and we were like, well, is it going to adopt? It's fully adopted, and not only by property management companies, but also, most importantly, by prospects. And I feel like prospect preferences, they're changing all the time, but they're never going back to where they were, right? So knowing that prospects, especially Gen Zs, right? Like that's a big, we talked about millennials. Now it's like Gen Zs, right? Push on that generation that is completely different, right? As well. And what do they want? They want self-service, right? And there's so many studies widely available that are just really trying to prepare all the companies for what's coming. And in order to stay relevant, we have to adapt to the changes that are coming with our clients.
No, I think that sounds wonderful. All right, and then here's the big curveball. Do you think that AI search, which by the way is currently driving 0.08% of all traffic to websites, I got that stat.
Nice stat, Anne.
That's good.
I posted something about ChatGPT and several people threw that stat out and agreed on it. So I was like, cool. Do you think AI search is going to replace Google search?
I actually asked which self-guided tour is the best in multifamily.
Okay, yes, I vaguely remember that you have asked this. Okay.
But how it originated was exactly because, I wanted to search for self-guided tours, and I was wondering what ChatGPT would tell me.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that from when OpenAI kind of came up, like it was very imperfect, and it was very it wasn't really giving us answers that were accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how it grew, it's to the point that it's actually very accurate and gives us good answers, right? And I started replacing my searches through that personally, and then I verified it, but maybe because I was curious about it, right? I think that I wonder if we're going to change how we speak about it, because we say, oh, Google this, right? Oh, Google that, right? Are we gonna just replace it and say ask chat? Or, I don't know, maybe we will, right? I don't know if it's gonna replace. I think that it's people will search through it. So I think it's going to be very important to also know how to train AI to give the answers you wanted, right, to your clients. So there's going to be different techniques, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of schools on how to do it properly. And I feel like there's more and more companies emerging that want to show you how to do it correctly. I don't know if they got it figured out yet because it's still kind of new, right? They don't know.
Yeah.
But I know that you can train your own AI as well to actually optimize how you analyze certain things. And if you feed it information, it's going to take it and it's going to make the best out of it. So there is going to be a point when people will start definitely searching more on it. Not sure if it's going to replace it. Definitely not the old generations that are used to Googling this and that. But the young generations that are really optimizing their own, like there's so many marketers, like I mentioned, and influencers, like in our talk before this podcast, that really just know how to use technology, and anything that is new, they learn so fast about, and they know how to implement it to their daily lives. And I feel like this is something that is growing so fast And it's like it's really almost like scary fast. This is the fastest growing technology that that was ever known to human, right? It's going to change the world for sure.
I think so too. And I do think that AI search will replace Google search, but I think it'll take a little bit. I think it'll take like five years. I don't know if I've given a time frame.
In 5 years, I'm gonna check in with you if you were the Nostradamus of multifamily.
AI still needs a true source of information, so I don't know. They're still getting their info from the net, which is run by Google.
Yeah.
But so I'm in the camp of no, and Ann and I agree on a lot of things. We don't agree on this. I don't, whatever. It'll be fun. Let's see what happens in 5 years.
I'm burying $100 bill and one of us gets it in 5 years. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It was so fascinating to hear about. I think the biggest thing that I learned today was, some of the stats, first of all, about how self-guided tours are really being utilized by prospects was huge. I hadn't really realized those numbers before, but also learning about your technology and the idea of, I love that, visualization of the museum tour where prospects are really getting the experience of the full property. That just sounds like a game changer. That's much different, by the way, than the salesperson just giving me the car keys. Like now I feel like I kind of didn't get like a full like self-guided experience.
But you know what? You did, because it's all about experience, right? Like I think sales should be all about the experience, right? And I think that I know I'm not biased because I believe in our technology and what we provide. We really care about prospect experience. And that's why that outer visual aspect of the museum like tours, it's super important to us.
Yep. No, that sounds wonderful. Well, thank you, Dorota, so much for your time. Thank you to Carlos, our producer. Thank you to Chris, as always. This is going to publish after AIM, but hopefully we see some of you at AIM. And until next time, this has been the Apartment Department.